he threatens to, says the chairman of the Joint Chiefs probably should be executed. And then he says that the news network that is most critical of him should be taken off the air. This is not a reach. I could go back and talk about Nazi Germany, and I do it without any concerns whatsoever. And if people can't start drawing the parallels, well, you're just stupid, or you have your head in the sand, or you're one of them.
That Morning Joe clip was broadcasted in September of 2023, and he was pretty direct, as you saw, in pointing out the parallels between Trump's authoritarian impulses and Nazi Germany. And he even said that if you don't see the similarities yourself, you're either stupid or one of them. And look, I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. But let's go ahead and fast forward to today to see if he's keeping that same energy now that Trump has been elected again.
Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we?
I don't know, maybe because you literally suggested that he was comparable to Hitler. And if you really believed that, which you should, it'd be naive to think you can actually reason with a Hitlerian figure, but it's clear that they're worried about their own asses. They're scared about retribution since Trump did threaten their parent company, NBC. So, I guess their goal is to collaborate with fascists and effectively become one of them in order to avoid being victimized by the fascists. It is a cowardly move, but as you're going to see, there's a lot of liberals shitting their pants right now who are predictably going out of their way to kiss Trump's ring in advance in hopes that he'll spare them from his wrath as well. So they're playing a very dangerous game that is not just going to legitimize Donald Trump, it will ultimately embolden Trump. And we'll talk about how later on. But first, let's hear a little bit more from these elitist cowards about why they decided to bend the knee to a fascist. And they're going to let us know that Democrats that they talk to are also preparing to do the same exact thing.
Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
This is a president who's not seeking re-election, so maybe, just maybe, now could be the time for both parties to get to work. And I will tell you, a lot of Democratic leaders we've talked to this past week, since the election, have told Mika and me it's time for a new approach. And when I say top Democrats, I mean top Democrats. They said, we're open, and this was before we talked to Donald Trump. They said, listen, we're open to working with the incoming president if the incoming president is open to working with us.
Yeah, the question is, though, how do we get there? Hyperbole and personal attacks will not work. My hair on fire doesn't work. We've all seen that. What also does not work is threatening political opponents with arrest, harassment, and even jail. That is a failed path. Recent history has proven that impeachments and trials turn those on trial into political martyrs and only make them more popular with the American people. Just ask Bill Clinton and Donald Trump.
Don't be mistaken. We're not here to defend or normalize Donald Trump. We're here to report on him.
Sure you are. That entire segment to me was so bizarre because it almost felt like a hostage video. And their fear was palpable. I'm sure that they're not just afraid of Donald Trump. They're probably fearful of backlash from their audience, as they should be, because they're capitulating after for years telling their audience how dangerous Donald Trump is. And now they went to Mar-a-Lago to chum it up with somebody who they said was dangerous. So their audience is going to see that as something that's deeply disingenuous, as they should. But the reason why I say that their fear was palpable almost is because Mika's line about political retribution. She said that it's counterproductive. And the way she said that made me feel like she was talking to Trump specifically. She was trying to tell Trump, hey, don't come after me and my dumbass Republican husband because you're only going to make us more popular if liberals think that we're martyrs. That's what that was giving to me. But I'm probably reading too much into this. But here's the thing. Regardless of how fearful they are, they have nothing to fear. They're multimillionaires. They're going to be okay. They have no skin in the game. They don't have a family member who's going to be deported or a trans child who's going to lose access to gender-affirming healthcare. They don't have to worry about losing their own health insurance. They don't have to worry about inflation from Trump's tariffs. And if one of their family members happens to need an abortion, they can safely fly them to any state or country to make sure that they get the healthcare that they need. The only thing those two are worried about is Trump coming after them for shit talking. And as somebody like JD Vance knows firsthand, Trump is willing to forgive you if you kiss the ring. And that's exactly what they chose to do. But unlike Trump's other potential and future victims, they're not going to have the chance to speak to them, to kiss his ass, or beg for their lives. The child of a dreamer isn't going to get to talk to Trump to plead with him to not deport his parents. Parents of a trans child won't be given the opportunity to meet with Donald Trump and share their experience with him. I'm not going to be able to convince Trump to not nominate another Supreme Court justice who wants to dissolve my marriage. The Americans who will be harmed the most will never have the chance to make their case before getting steamrolled by this administration. Rich pricks like Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, however, will, as we just saw. They want to protect this one thing that they stand to lose, which is their platform on MSNBC. And even if in the worst case scenario, Trump told his FCC chair to go after them specifically, the worst thing that would happen to them is that they would lose their jobs, but they'd still be okay. They'd still be multimillionaires who'd be able to retire the very next day and have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. But they chose to capitulate to Donald Trump even before he took office. They weren't willing to lose anything. We need a new word to describe this because pathetic just doesn't adequately describe their behavior there. And what they're doing is especially dangerous because the things they said about Donald Trump being a fascist were true. And now, because of their cowardice, Republicans are going to take their capitulation as evidence that anyone who called Trump a fascist was lying or being hyperbolic. Even though Donald Trump is definitionally a fascist. This is according to political scientists. This is according to historians. But thanks to Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, some of the most popular pundits in liberal media, well, now all the conservatives are going to say, I told you so. They were all lying about it. And Fox News is certainly doing a victory lap in the aftermath of this weird little video that they put out where they talked about meeting Donald Trump. Let's watch.
But I just don't understand where they are going to go forward and not admit that they lied. Because if they really thought he was a fascist, a Nazi, and he was getting at Trump supporters with those comments about MSNBC or MSG, the Madison Square Garden crowd, calling supporters Nazis and so on and so forth. Look, they have to admit they lied before they can go forth. Like, I'll never believe another word that they say.
I mean, she's not wrong, but the problem is that criticism is going to be applied to anyone who's been critical of Donald Trump. Even before the election, people like myself who were sounding the alarm about Trump's fascism were accused of being hyperbolic. And now Trump supporters have an example to point to prove that we all were lying and being hyperbolic. So great job, Joe and Mika. You spineless cowards undermined the point that we were all trying to make about fascists because you have absolutely no fucking courage. But to be fair, they're not alone. As Joe Scarborough pointed out, top Democrats are willing to lay down and die for Donald Trump. That's not the way that he characterized it. That's the way I'm characterizing it. But he said that they're open to working with the incoming president. Now, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone because Democrats already pre-conceded on a number of issues before the election. Democrats shifted to the right on issues like fracking and immigration. And now they're weighing whether or not to throw trans people under a bus too. Or, as this headline from Brooke Migdon of The Hill put it, they're wrestling over the role of trans rights. So of course they're going to wave the white flag after the election if they were already waving it before the election. And now we're seeing more and more Democrats go out of their way to kiss Trump's ass too. Take Colorado Governor Jared Polis, for example. So back in August, after RFK Jr. announced that he'd be campaigning with Donald Trump, Polis commented saying, "Not sure how bringing back measles and bringing back polio makes anyone more healthy." Now fast forward to November 14th, and he put out a lengthy post celebrating news that Donald Trump would appoint RFK Jr. to be the head of HHS, saying, "He helped us defeat vaccine mandates in Colorado in 2019 and will help make America healthy again by shaking up HHS and FDA. I hope he leans into personal choice on vaccines rather than bans, which I think are terrible, just like mandates. But what I'm most optimistic about is taking on Big Pharma and the corporate AG oligopoly to improve our health." Before you mock him or disagree, I want to share with you some quotes that, if he follows through, show why I'm excited. Now, I'm not going to read you the quotes. You can pause the video if you want to do that. But he just shares quotes of RFK saying less insane things. So after he criticized RFK Jr. for wanting to bring back measles and polio, this dumbass Democratic governor praised him for helping his state bring back measles and polio. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Got it. But after he took heat for praising an anti-vax crank, he responded to this sane washing of RFK Jr. by saying that he really only agrees with him when it comes to food and nutrition, and adds, "Lest there be any doubt, I am vaccinated, as is my family." You know you're winning if you have to say this. "I will hold any HHS secretary to the same high standard of protecting and improving public health." Sure you will, bud. I love that you were criticizing him, but once he becomes Trump's nominee officially, now you're like, oh, I love the guy. It's just, these people are so fucking pathetic, and I despise them with every fiber of my being. You can say, well, maybe he's playing 5D chess and he's trying to reverse psychology RFK Jr. into doing what he wants. I mean, I think that's fine, but you can do all of these things. You can challenge an administration while not kissing their ass, right? And he can say what he wants about RFK's more sane takes, but that doesn't change the fact that overall this man is dangerous, and whatever rationalization you're giving, oh, well, I'm vaccinated myself, it doesn't change the fact that you endorsed a dangerous anti-vax crank whose lies literally got dozens of people killed. There's an article from AP that talks about the victims of RFK Jr.'s vaccine conspiracy theories, but I want to hone in on just one story that really demonstrates how predatory this man is. In June 2019, Kennedy and his wife, the actress Cheryl Hines, visited Samoa, a trip Kennedy later wrote was arranged by Edwin Tamases, a Samoan local anti-vaccine influencer. Vaccine rates had plummeted after 2 children died in 2018 from a measles vaccine that a nurse had incorrectly mixed with a muscle relaxant. The government suspended the vaccine program for months. By the time Kennedy arrived, health authorities were trying to get back on track. He was treated as a distinguished guest, traveling in a government vehicle, meeting with the prime minister and, according to Kennedy, many health officials and the health minister. He also met with anti-vaccine activists, including Tamases and another well-known influencer, Taylor Winterstein, who posted a photograph of herself and Kennedy on her Instagram. Quote, "These past few days have been profoundly monumental for me, my family, and for this movement to date," she wrote, adding hashtags including "investigate before you vaccinate." A few months later, a measles epidemic broke out in Samoa, killing 83 people, mostly infants and children in a population of about 200,000. So this man seized on an opportunity to spread his anti-vaccine bullshit, and it led to a measles outbreak that killed dozens of people, mostly innocent infants and children who can't make that decision for themselves. But since you had their parents all hyped up on these vaccine conspiracy theories because of a mistake that happened, they died. People died. Dozens of people died. But despite all of these attempts to sane wash him, RFK Jr. himself has been pretty upfront about the fact that he's pretty batshit insane. Case in point.
My mother, when she found out you were coming on, she's a big Democrat, she says, he's dangerous. He's an anti-vaxxer. He says that autism comes from vaccines, and you must challenge him on that, Jesse. Is my mom crazy?
Well, I do believe that autism does come from vaccines.
Yeah, but let's celebrate this guy becoming HHS secretary, right, Jared? But listen, to be fair to Jared, he's not alone, because another person who celebrated this choice was Marianne Williamson, who took to Twitter to applaud Trump for making this, quote, good choice. Yeah, how about this? How about you fuck off, Marianne? What a spineless opportunist she turned out to be. Jesus Christ. But people try to rationalize RFK's anti-vax views by saying he doesn't want to ban vaccines per se, hopefully. He just wants to defeat vaccine mandates. And that's why Democrats like Jared Polis like him, because that makes it so much better. Listen, that is not the defense that you think it is, because you don't understand how it works doesn't make it good, okay? Vaccine mandates aren't just bodily autonomy for one person because of one person's choice, right? Their choice to not get vaccinated endangers other people. They effectively take away the choice from people who cannot get vaccinated. There are immunocompromised people who can't take vaccines. You can't get certain vaccines until you're a particular age. And those vulnerable populations, infants, children, immunocompromised people, they're only protected if enough of the population is inoculated against viruses that they could catch and then spread to those people who can't get vaccinated. So this is not akin to the pro-abortion, my body, my choice argument, which literally just affects one person, because when it comes to vaccines, your quote-unquote choice can directly affect other people's lives in a negative way. But some Democrats pretend like vaccines won't actually be RFK Jr.'s priority, even though he made a name for himself being an anti-vax crank. But they're downplaying his anti-vaccine bullshit in order to talk about his more reasonable takes on nutrition, which his takes on nutrition are sensible. But that's kind of what they're emphasizing while they're de-emphasizing the anti-vax bullshit and pretending like it doesn't exist. For example, Cory Booker actually put out a pretty conspicuous video talking about American nutrition standards as well as preservatives and chemicals in our food. And everything that he said here was spot on. He talked about how this is the result of lobbying for multinational corporations, who he also takes money from, by the way, so that's kind of ironic. But in the video, Cory Booker doesn't mention vaccines or RFK Jr. whatsoever, but this video that he put out on November 18th, just days after RFK Jr. was named as the HHS secretary, is him broadcasting to all of us that he will be voting for RFK Jr. And maybe you might think that I'm reading too much into this, but I'm not, because Jared Polis thanked him for, quote, keeping an open mind on RFK Jr., and even RFK himself thanked him for his, quote, long history of leadership on this issue. So Cory Booker is cowardly trying to preempt criticism that he knows he'll receive from Democrats for voting for this anti-vax crank. So that way, when he inevitably gets asked why he'd vote for somebody who's so dangerous, he can say, well, it's because of his stance on nutrition, rather than just voting against him and opposing all of Trump's picks. Be an obstructionist. Republicans would do it if Kamala won, so why won't you do it too? Here's the thing. You don't have to support RFK Jr. as HHS secretary if you want stronger nutrition standards. You can do that without supporting him. Cory Booker is a United States senator. He could have proposed a bill when Democrats had full control of both chambers in Congress to do just that. He could have pushed harder to get money out of politics so that way these companies don't effectively pay off politicians to let them poison our food. And more importantly, you can demand a different HHS pick who supports those goals but doesn't have the anti-vax bullshit that comes with RFK Jr. But as we heard Joe Scarborough say, Democrats are more than willing to work with Donald Trump. So it's not just about RFK Jr. and Cory Booker and Jared Polis. It's indicative of a broader trend that we have to look out for, especially in the next 2 years when Republicans will have full control of government. Democrats aren't just afraid, but they're trying to get along to prove how reasonable they are. So that way, when they take back power, Republicans will do the same. But apparently they haven't learned from 8 years of Obama and 4 years of Biden that they don't want to work with you. They think you're the enemy. Trump has been saying he thinks you're all the enemy. In fact, he called you the enemy within and named some names like Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff. But yet, they're willing to go along with whatever Donald Trump wants. In fact, I believe Adam Schiff was one of the 50-plus Democrats that voted to give Trump the power to kill NGOs by stripping them of funding if he makes the determination that they are funded by terrorists or support terrorists. And it's completely arbitrary, but it's basically a way for him to crush pro-Palestinian protests. So the signs are already there that Democrats are going to be weak, that they're going to roll over and die, and you need to know about that. But understand that what they're doing is deeply, deeply dangerous, and you need to hold them accountable. If you voted for Democrats, you have to hold them accountable if they just roll over and they don't fight Donald Trump. And I want to leave you with an excerpt from Timothy Snyder's book called On Tyranny, who's going to explain why capitulation to authoritarians is dangerous. Quote, "Do not obey in advance. Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want, and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do." And that right there is why you never, ever cower in the fear of fascists. You stand your ground and you fight back, even if resistance is futile. Fascists are emboldened right now, and they want you to be fearful. And it is natural to be worried, but preemptively giving up the fight against them makes them all the more powerful. And that's exactly what Democrats are doing right now. So any liberal pundit or politician who is obeying in advance, they're not just weak and pathetic. They're one of them, as Joe Scarborough would put it.